Hello and welcome to the Foxcatcher review of the racing weekend. We're kicking off with Sydney. Obviously, it had the 5 Group 1s. My name's Julian Valence, joined in Sydney on location by Nic Ashman. How are you, mate? It was 5 Group 1s, Golden Slipper Day. There's a bit to get through, but you survived the weekend okay?
I did indeed, Jules. Hello to you. Hello to everyone, our Foxcatcher family, if you like. It was a great day racing at Rosehill. Track played, I thought, pretty well, pretty consistent with what we thought going into the meeting, pretty consistent with the rail 3 metres and pretty consistent with what we see most Golden Slipper days. Definitely an advantage to be sort of up and in. We'll touch on that in a moment's time. V. Sistina gets the job done in the Ramford Stakes. I think there's more to come. We'll talk about that a bit later on. The Golden Slipper, blanket finish. That's what you get with an even bunch of 2-year-olds, and a little bit more to dissect there through the Group 1s. Looking forward to talking about all 5 Group 1s with you, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. We'll go in depth about those 5 Group 1s. We'll find a couple of races that maybe go into the doghouse, maybe some that go into the hen house. But you did touch on the track. So let's look at the track intel here. So rail out 3 metres the entire circuit. Good 4. Now, I think there was plenty of talk after the event or even during the races here at Rosehill that you had to be rails in run, but not one to be a twat about it. This is what you identified easily on the Thursday in the preview show, is that this is how Rosehill can play, dry conditions. This is what you need to be. So as much as some people were saying it's rails in run, it's a tip, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to another tip later on when I start talk to Hutchi about something else. But this is what you identified, and this is typical Rosehill. We spoke about Rosehill 2 weeks ago on Fox Factors and went into depth about how Rosehill can play, and it seems like it ran to the pattern, yeah?
Yeah, 100%. The bulk of the winners were in those first 6 lanes. Our intel was lanes 2 to 6, and that's the information I got from someone that actually walked the track, I think, on Wednesday afternoon. So I feel like, providing it's predictable, the only complaints I've ever had is when they sort of water the track on race day, because then it's very difficult to get someone to walk the track between 9:30 a.m. and the first race. So if you can sort of identify those patterns, it's consistent with what's happened previously, it's consistent with the information you got coming through at acceptance time, you can bet accordingly. And that's all we want: transparency, consistency, and then you bet accordingly and the markets can adjust themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean just because we say lanes 2 to 6, it's going to be more profitable following those lanes, because you might get an outlier in race 10 that pays a big price to offset that. So we're not talking ROIs, we're just talking about where we expect the bulk of the winners to come. You should be able to do your maps accordingly.
Yeah, and I think that's, in essence, it's a high percentage play throughout the day, and that's sort of what you've been providing for the punters, which has been good. Let's get to the hen house, my friend. So let's get to the race that you think might not have been a Group 1 that you think we can follow with confidence, whether it be the winner or whether it be other horses around it. So you've identified race 4, winner, Autumn Glow.
This is a magnificent return. She obviously, this is first up for her. This is a fast run race, more than 3/4 of a second inside standard time, 22, 10, 11, 42, last 400, 200. That's slick going. It was the fastest of 3 1,200-metre races on the day. One of them, of course, being the Golden Slipper. She had to chase from a long way out. The runner-up's gone very well here. This race is clearly the race of the day, the Derby Munro. She'll come out of this and go to the Arrowfield Stakes, and I think she's probably the bet of the championships at this point in time off this figure she's done here. I reckon what they'll use is the Arrowfield, listening to Chris Waller in a post-race interview with Channel 7, I think they're going to look at her and just see whether or not they can get her at 1,200 metres with perhaps a view to the Everest in the spring.
Okay.
Jolie Star won 1,000 guineas as a spring 3-year-old. They kept her to the Sprinter Tripso a little bit later in her life. And I just wonder if they're going to try and do the same thing with Autumn Glow. She'll only have 2 runs, I think, this autumn, Jules, and then they'll put her away. And if she's dominant enough and rates as well as she did on Saturday again in the Arrowfield, I reckon you'll find that she might be a chance of gaining that slot for the Everest. And then they'll give her a chance at sprint races in the spring with a view that they can also, if she doesn't win a major Group 1, they've still got a Newmarket handicap the following year possibly to look at down the Flemington Straight. So she's a very exciting horse. I think she's effective up to a mile. She might even get beyond that, but she might also be an Everest horse. She's just so exciting.
Yeah, we spoke about it probably in a previous life, Nic, about on Sectional Stars in terms of the ability to hold a horse, keep onto it. If it can go out hard and then come home hard. You don't see him too often. And as you say, this is a fast-run race, and yet still she's had the ability to be able to still come home just about closest, best last 400, 200 of the day. These horses don't come along very often, and you're going to continually see this horse be able to dominate races after that performance. So, yes, she goes into the Hen House punters, Autumn Glow. One for the doghouse here, Nico, that you've identified, and this is probably a theme that, started back whenever these babies started kicking around. Like, we just sort of never really got a number for them, but, the diamond I had in the doghouse when it ran, you've identified the slipper here.
Yeah, Golden Slipper in the doghouse, and I actually backed Maroon. I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but it was a race that I liked the result of. But blanket finish, overall time, nothing slick here.
Yeah.
Last 400, 200, certainly against Autumn Glow was very disappointing, but even against the birthday card, it was nothing flash either. So I feel like if any of these horses were to come out and justify their position as the favourites for the size produce, this race should have gone better. So I would suggest to punters that I'd be very cautious, and I'll talk about who I think you should back in the size produce in our Fox Den a little later on. But I think this race is one that I'd be cautious about, assuming that because it's a Golden Slipper, it's going to provide the winner of the size produce.
Yep. Okay. Good intel there for the Golden Slipper. Let's get to the other Group 1 races on the day. So let's give the punters a view on how these races have gone overall and what do we want to do with them going forward, because obviously we're now getting into the championships in a couple of weeks' time. You'd think most of these horses will continue on their merry way. Let's start with the Ramford. It was race 5. It was won by Via Sistina. She's gone well inside standard time here, and the last 400, 200, pretty good, 11.58, I think the last 200 for Via. So she just continued on her merry way. She was really well supported. We'll get to that a little bit later in the points bet hits and misses, but she's now just becoming sort of a bit bomb-proof around this sort of distance, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I mean, look, after her first up run, I think we said on the review show, I don't think she'll get beaten again this preparation. And after her second up run, which was clearly her flat run, she's bounced out of that really well. She's run a better rating here than she did in the Chipping Norton, not by a mile, but she's definitely improved. Yep. Looking at her last 200 metres compared to her 400 to 200 metres split, I think Chris has left a bit of petrol in the tank as well. So he clearly wants a peaking for Queen Elizabeth Day. When you watch the race, you might have been a little bit disappointed with the way she couldn't quite put Lindemann away, who's clearly not an A-grade Group 1 weight for age horse. But when I look, the race was a fast-run race, or reasonably fast. She quickened from the 400 to 200 to get to him, and then she just lacked that little bit of base fitness. Slowly run race first up, faster run race second up, but she still got to this third up as a fast-run 2,000-metre race. This will bring her on immensely.
Yeah.
She hasn't cooked herself in it. She's going to be cherry ripe for day 2 of the championships. And look, I know $1.70, it's easy to crow about them, but geez, I'll tell you what, if you're looking for anchor multis and whatnot for your futures bets, she's certainly one to throw in, because I don't think they'll be beating her in the Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to be second go 2,000 metres for the prep. It's going to be her peak run. She's going to continually progress, you would think, her rating. You speak about Lindemann. I mean, it was quick on the quick 7-day backup. Again, we speak about that, getting to 2,000 metres, quick 7-day backup. That's going to be his peak run. So probably wherever he goes next, yes, he's ran her to a short margin on Saturday. I think he probably regresses now in his prep compared to they're on different trajectory here for where they're actually going to end up. So that's Via Sistina, the Ramford Stakes. The next race we're going to get to here was the Rosehill Guineas, Nico. Broadsiding wins the race. He was soft in betting, so the market wanted to take him on. Look, not as quick, obviously, as the 2,000 metres with Via Sistina. It's still a little bit inside standard time for 3-year-olds over the 2,000 metres at Rosehill. Last 400, 200, a little bit soft again compared to probably Via Sistina as well. And you can tell you've got horses there with not much margins. But what do we do with this race going forward? And probably more prevalent is, where do they all go? Because my gut feel now is, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, is I don't think Swift Falcon gets 2,000 metres and won't get a mile and a half. That's my opinion there. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. He's got a sharper turn of foot than his rivals, and that's why he was able to figure in the finish on Saturday. Look, I think with respect to broadsiding, I keep knocking him because he keeps on only just – he reminds me a bit of Animo He's not as good as Animo, but when Animo was winning, he wasn't really busting the clock much.
Yep.
He was running better figures than broadsiding, but not, not that real top-line figure. I think on my database, the highest he rated was a 95. To give you context, the real top-liners run 98s, 99s. Pride of Jenny's hit 98. Nature Strip had hit 99. Winks obviously hit 100 a few times, and Very Elegant did, and Via Sustina did.
Those islands.
He's just those islands. The islands. Broadsiding's definitely not on the islands. So that's why he was soft on Saturday out to 290. I think the big pros looked at that Randwick Guineas and they were a bit like, it was unconvincing, or whatever the word is I'm looking for. And he won because he was just Johnny on the spot. I think Aliana has got a real opportunity here to go to the Derby, not the Oaks. We'll get a bit of guide on Saturday in the Vinery Stud Stakes. I suspect Chris Waller's sitting there going, let's have a look at how this Melbourne filly goes in Sydney. If she's just as effective Sydney way of going, I think she will be. I don't think Aliana will back up in the Vinery Stud Stakes.
That's important because that's a question I was going to ask you, mate. Was you look at that run and you go, geez, love to go now. It's 7-day back up against your own sex and age, but you think she wouldn't?
The problem is, Jules, is that if she backs up and gets beaten, it's going to be hard to go on. So I think Chris, being a real meticulous planner, he'll go, you know what I'm going to do instead? Instead of backing up, having second run at 2,000 metres against Treasure of the Moment, she's a more brilliant filly than Aliana. Chris is smart. He'll go, you know what would probably work really well? If I run her in the Derby and back her up in the Oaks, then I get Treasure of the Moment, first go 2,400 metres this preparation, me, second go 2,400 metres, and on a 7-day backup. And if that track's a bit sloppy like it can be, I bet you any money Aliana will be nice and firm in the market. And I reckon he's going to play into that space. So I would say to you, that $1.60, $1.70 around, if people can still grab it for the Vinery Stud Stakes, I reckon Treasure of the Moment's a good thing there because she's just the best horse in the race, and I don't think Aliana will back up. Aliana, I reckon, goes to the Derby, have a look around her there, and maybe backs up in the Oaks, depending on what happens in the Derby. Obviously, if she wins, she mightn't back up. In terms of third place horse, Swift Falcon, well, I thought that they would have been better off going to Doncaster Mile Prelude this Saturday. He would have won that for sure, and he would be lining up in a Doncaster with 50, 51 kilos after the penalty for the Prelude. So, and he probably would have been just about favourite for the race. Given what's going there, I think it would have been a very winnable race. But now, I'm not sure. I mean, can they get him to come back in distance? I don't know. He probably doesn't get into a Doncaster there. He's going to be a fair attrition rate.
Okay.
So having a look at that race yesterday, he needs 34 horses to come out.
Yep.
I can count at least 20, 25, and you just never know what can happen between now and then. So he mightn't be completely out of the picture. Plymouth, I think, goes on to the Derby. He'll put himself on speed and keep whacking away, so he might be one there for the Derby as well. And the rest I'm not too interested in following.
All right, very good. So that was a good wrap of the Rosehill Guineas. Let's get to the George Ryder Stakes. Winners, Gringotts, they're outside standard time, so they didn't go overly hard. This horse sort of sat outside leader, just, a little bit off the lead, and then was able to win the race. Tight finish, but that's okay because it's a slowly run race. That's what's going to happen. They've zoomed home last 400, 200. So I think this race could be a really nice one for next start. These horses could then just explode. So
Gringotts gets into the Doncaster for sure now. I think he was already in the field anyway. Fangirl got the slowly run race. Be careful about looking at this and going, oh, she was 3 wide. She had cover from her stablemate, Militarize. And for mine, even though Rails in Run was an advantage, she got the right race shape to suit Fangirl. So she probably did pretty close to what I would have expected her to do in a race with that type of shape. The reason she didn't win is probably because she just had to cover that little bit of extra ground. Had she got a slightly more economical run, she probably wins the race. That's probably everyone's worked that out. Shearwolf, on the other hand, he needs a faster tempo to show his best. Remember in the King Charles when he ran down Pride of Jenny? Fast tempo. He didn't get it. He's the one that's going to be the big improver at a Randwick Mile. He does have to give them weight. That's when you're going to see him go to a new level. You get an $8, $9 in a Doncaster. I'd rather take him at $8 or $9 than Gringotts at $6, albeit he meets Gringotts 2 kilos worse at the weights. Then you get to, say, Tommy Kitten. Tommy Kitten's last 400 metres, just as good as Fangirl's. And he just had the positional play behind her. So I think he's in the mix as well. And he drops down a little bit in weight into a Doncaster Mile. And I think Randwick will be more of his track, more to his liking as well. Don't forget, he went within a bees, beating Mr. Brightside first up. He actually beat him second up in the All-Star Mile. And now for mine, he's run a super race here. He couldn't have done much more from where he was. Same last 400 metres as Fangirl. How can you complain with that? She's got a very good turn of foot. What I'm saying here is Tom Kitten's come back the best he's ever been.
Yep.
And I think you've got to follow him now and say, right, we always knew he had a bit of ability, and now he's starting to put those good runs together.
Will he go to the Doncaster, Tom Kitten? Yes.
I think so. Randwick Miles, his go. I mean, I don't think James will go out of this to a 2,000-metre Queen Elizabeth. He'll go to the Donny, and then, if he wins or runs well, he might have a throw at the stumps and back up in a QE. But I think he probably goes to the Doncaster. The only other option for him would be to freshen up and go to the All-Age Stakes, something that I think that we thought maybe Broadsiding would do, but maybe they see his play. Instead of conceding weight to some horses, maybe they freshen him up and go back to the 1,400 metres, which he can do easily because it's a slowly run race.
I've got an AK-47 to your head in a hostage video. Tom Kitten versus Chow in the Doncaster. You got to choose one.
Chow.
Yeah.
I think Joey, he had that setback after his first up run, and he was supposed to go to the Very Elegant Stakes second up, the old Chipping Norton. He had to sort of back off him, and Joe's pretty soft on these horses anyway. He goes to the Canterbury Stakes and just, runs through the line as you would expect. He gets into this race here. If this was faster run, I think he just about beats him.
No, I think you're right.
And I think he'll get that pace in a Doncaster.
That's what you expect, wouldn't you? Like big field, big Randwick Mile, plenty of money on offer. It just seems, I know you look at it and you go, you'd like him to maybe have 1.5 kilos less or whatever that might be, but he's paid for that for what he's been able to win in the spring.
What's he got in the Johnny? 56.5?
Yeah, I think it's
57.
Without knowing off the top of my head.
It's
just got a monster figure in him, you would think, off this. This is where you just bounce and you know that he's going to be able to absorb the pressure in the big mile. He's the race has evolved a little bit. I think we could talk about the Doncaster and even the Epsom to a certain extent. It just used to be these races where you're on close to the min, you would find the winner. And 10 years ago, that's what happened. I think it's evolved a little bit to become a bit of a quality, and those horses at the top of the weights are right in it. And I think we're going to see Chow run an absolute peak. Now, whether that's good enough to win the race and he does get blows by one down the weights that we sort of, left field. But he's got the perfect platform now, you think, to run the best number he can run in the Doncaster, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's perfectly set up now. Joey's very patient. Fourth up Randwick Mile out of a slowly run 1,500-metre race. He's got 57.5 kilos. Gringotts and Tommy Kitten have both got 55.5. So, he does have to give him a couple of kilos. And in a fast-run Randwick Mile, that does count for something.
Yep.
But I just think he's going to surge to a new level. I think Gringotts got his birthday on Saturday. Don't get me wrong. He's a good, tough, on-pace runner. And he can, again, we don't know if it's going to be a fast-run race. We have to look at the map for the Doncaster. Right. Tommy Kitten sort of had a few runs now. Not saying he's cooked, but just saying he's had a few runs. He's going really well, and I want to follow him. But I think Cheerwolf as well will go to that new level. And then don't forget, then he backs up and goes to a Queen Elizabeth. Now, I know the mare's there, Via Sistina, but what if Pride of Jenny comes up from Melbourne, has a really fast-run race? You've got the other horse that led, the American horse that led Via's race on Saturday, the Rambit. I mean, I still back Via Sistina, but Cheerwolf loves a really fast-run race, and he might just be a bit of a blowout in that race. It'll be on 7-day
fantastic championships, doesn't it? It really does. Let's get to the last Group 1. It was the Galaxy over 1,100 metres. It's won by the horse that was first up, Private Harry. They've gone like a half a second inside standard time. The last 400, 200 is okay compared to the rest of the day. I think it's an outstanding effort to be able to win a race like this first up. What do we want to do with the race overall, mate?
It's a tricky race because, when they carry 53, where do they go from here? It's all weight for age. The TJ Smith, the all-age, if you want to go out to 1,400 metres, even if you back off and go to the Doomben 10,000, 1,200, it's all weight for age. I think these horses, if you're smart and you've resumed it from here, like Private Harry, Front Page, Uncommon James is from Queensland. Briasa was first up, had a wide gate. She was fantastic. I think you're probably the smart play here is to back off and go up to Brisbane because they're the types of weight for age races that I think these horses can compete in.
Beautiful. Okay, so that's a wrap of the Group 1 races. Very, very thorough from Nic Ashman. So wrap your ears around that. All right, let's get to the hits and misses. So what happened to the points bet market? Was there some trends here that we might be able to follow into the championships or later on? Or was this just their day that the market wanted to be with them? Starting with race 2 here, Sounds of Heaven, $9 into $3.90, Nick. It's a miss. It runs second. So if those that played around the each way price, they've probably hit. What do we do with this horse?
Look, she was fine. She was great. Mare of Mount Bull is a good mare.
Yep.
She had the run just in behind her. She had the rails and run. She got the split. She was just beaten by a better horse on the day. There was no real genuine excuses here. And I think she beat the third horse comfortably. I think she can progress out of this and go forward to something else. I mean, do they test her up in trip? Do they have a crack going towards a chairman's? Or are they a bit more conservative and go towards like a JRA plate over 2,000 metres? Time will tell.
Race 4, they back 2 here. Autumn Glow, which was spoken about, $1.95 into $1.80, big hit. And Gangster Granny at a price, $14 into $6, again, a miss. But I'd say probably a lot of those people were playing into that each way space, and it's ran third. So they identified one at a bigger price, and they identified one right at the pointy end of the market.
Well, Autumn Glow's just a star. And we knew that sort of coming into this preparation. You were able to get black figures about her just because she's had that time off, the little setback coming into the autumn. But you kind of knew that given that she's unbeaten, she's well-bred, she's owned by a stud farm, they're going to try and keep that unbeaten record intact with her. And that's the appeal for Autumn Glow now going forward. So I think you can back her with confidence. We'll talk about her in a moment's time. Gangster Granny, I just think it was a case of she had the soft barrier, so she was going to map to get that rails and run. It was going to be a fast run race. You and I have spoken about this for years, going back to sectional stars. Fast run races, you generally want rails and run because you've got to do more work in the run. You need that economical factor. If you don't, you've got to cover ground. You're up against it. This one mapped to get the right run in transit, and they just thought, right, well, I want to back Autumn Glow. If there's one that could knock her off, it's probably the other horse that's going to get a suck run in behind her.
Very good. Race 5 in the Ramvet Via Sustina, $1.40 into $1.20, big hit. This goes to show that the big pros that are moving this market and are playing into this space is they're happy to take the 140, they're happy to take 133, they're happy to take $1.30 because they've got that number from the Cox Plate at 2,000 metres, probably even from a Turnbull point of view, which was a big number as well. It then was superseded by what she obviously did in the Cox Plate. That's the number they're going to tie to her now from a market point of view. So expect this to continue. Yeah,
100%. Well, look, I mean, I didn't want to make her a snap on the previous show, but, as I was saying then, I'm happy to take the $1.45. I had it marked $1.33, so I didn't think she'd get as short as $1.22, but she's just better than them. The only query was whether or not one of these imported horses maybe had a number that the pros might go, you know what, this horse maybe could knock her off, but looking at figures from overseas, it didn't appear that way. She was the best horse in the race, and they just said, how does she get beaten? She can't. Bang.
Rosehill Guineas, race 6, Swift Falcon. There was obviously the drift on the favourite broadsiding, so it had to be pushed into a few others, but Swift Falcon in particular, $4.60 into $3.80. It's a miss. It runs third. He's sort of in a little bit of limbo land for me. I just don't know where they go.
It wasn't so much. I mean, yes, I understand what you're saying that they backed Swift Falcon. That's where some of the percentage went. This is more about the drift for broadsiding. It was even money out to $2.90. They let him drift because he drew barrier 9. It was a rails and run day. We identified that in the previous show. That's what eventuated in the 5 races prior to this race. And I think they just thought broadsiding's probably just going to be off pace, well off the track. This is the opportunity for Swift Falcon, who's a more of a darting type of horse, to pinch runs underneath him, get out and ambush late. And it didn't quite pan out that way, but I think it was more about the drift for broadsiding. And they just elected to put the market percentage with Swift Falcon.
Yeah, good shout. Race 7, Chow Wolf, $5 into $4. Miss runs third. We've spoken about him. He's right on track for the Doncaster. And we get to the race 9, not the last, but obviously in the Galaxy. Sort of your mare, it just didn't work out for her. I mean, to be honest, she's pretty unlucky. Commemorative, I'm talking about. $11 they put up early doors points bet. That was absolutely smacked. She's ended up just about starting favourite. I know there was a little bit of a late push in the end for the winner, Private Harry, but 11 into $3.60. It's a miss, but gee, she's going well.
She's going well, but she's got a problem, Jules, and that is she misses the start. Yeah. She missed the start again on Saturday. She was the clear last after they'd gone 50 metres. Now, you might get away with that at Randwick over 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 metres because you've got just that sort of half turn or whatnot into the home straight. You won't get away with it at Rosehill over 1,100 metres. It's very hard to come from last, even if they do go quick. She needed to jump. She needed to be a fraction worse than midfield, not a clear last when they were settling. That said, she copped a bit of traffic in the straight. She was a little bit disappointing to the line. I don't think they really squeezed her up much. I'll be interested to see where they go next. It was worth a crack at the throw at the stumps. We did speak about it after her previous run, that she was a Galaxy horse. We said we'd go there. She was $18 at the time in futures markets. She started 370. Operation was a success, but the patient died.
Yes. Right. And on that note, we end the hits and misses for this week. Let's get to the Fox's Den here, Nico. So let's identify these 4 horses that you want to just put an asterisk around for the punters out there, because as we said, it's building right up into Sydney now. We've obviously got Tancred Day and then we build into the 2 weeks of the champs. What are we doing? What are the 4 horses, mate?
So we'll start with Autumn Glow. Now, I spoke about her, and I think she's a good thing in the Arrowfield Stakes. The reason is that Private Harry's the second favourite in that market. So we're going to use this just to talk a little bit about the futures as well. And I think Private Harry, he's won his Group 1, the Galaxy. So, I mean, do you go back to a Group 2 Arrowfield? Surely you have a crack at the TJ Smith if you are going to run in the Randwick Carnival, or you freshen him up knowing he goes very well on the fresh side, having won the Galaxy first up from a spell, and head to the Doomben 10,000, the Brisbane Carnival, use his bullets there. So I think she's one you can definitely follow. You're getting 230, 250 about her in the Arrowfield Stakes. I think she's a good bet there at that price. The next horse I want to talk to you about is Tommy Kitten. I mentioned that his last 400 metres was identical to Fangirl's. He had the exact same run. He was 3 wide with cover. So I think that's a sign that this horse is running at his absolute best. Now, does he go to a Doncaster? He might do. Does he freshen up and come back to an all-age stakes where he gets to carry level weights? Cheer Wolf's going to go to Doncaster and back up in the Queen Elizabeth. So if he just goes fresh into the into the all-age stakes, maybe that's his race. That's another Group 1 1,400-metre race for him. Third one I want to talk about is Via Sistina. A lot of people will be wondering, is she just a good thing in the Queen Elizabeth? I think she is. The only caveat would be a heavy track. Yeah. If it gets really bog, she's probably still going to go off your firm favourite, but you might get sort of close to black figures about her and it might make her a slight risk. But I think all things being equal, if the track's a soft 6 or better, they're just really going to struggle to beat her on the second day of the championships. And the last one is a curly one for you, Jules. Now, I binned the Golden Slipper, and I binned it, and I'm tying it in, just bringing that fish in for you.
Yeah, I
with
like
Vinrock. With Vinrock. Now, he won the size produce down there in good time.
Yep.
He produced a good rating on my database going into after the size. He produced probably top 3 or 4 rating of any 2-year-old this season. Woderton had the number 1 figure. He didn't get back to that figure. And obviously he almost went within what of winning the Golden Slipper.
Yeah.
Vinrock will put himself on pace, which I always think is an advantage in those 2-year-old races, as we saw again in the Golden Slipper on Saturday. And he's got the right numbers. So you're getting double figures about him to win the size produce. There's a bet for you for your futures markets as well.
Beautiful. Nice left field one there at the end, Vinrock, which will bring the different form on. That was in the Fox's Den. All right, let's do rapid fire here, Nico, because we've got through a lot here. So let's really zip through this. Through the line. Quickly, Rosehill track. A lot of talk about that it was a tip. What are we saying here?
No, not at all. Yep. This is what happens when you've got a firm deck and you've got to move the rail out. You've got to appreciate that track managers have to look after a track. The issue that all we want is transparency and consistency. So if someone can go out and walk the track a couple of days out and it lines up with historical data and it says that it's going to be a bit rails and run, we can get on here and tell you it's going to be a bit rails and run.
Yeah.
You can bet accordingly. For mine, the Rosehill track was consistent with how it's played previously with the rail in that position and consistent with what we got told from a walk on Wednesday afternoon. So, no, not at all. What about your track? That did look a bit disappointing down there.
A little bit disappointing. A little bit disappointing.
I think it needs a break. It's like a bad relationship.
This is the problem. So they've raced all the way through summer because they want to have the Friday nights and you get the people there and it's great and it's fantastic. This is an old and tired track. This track does not exist into 2026. To be honest, I don't know how they get through 2025 off that performance on Saturday. I think they've got another meeting in April, and then you've got to try and get it right for spring, and they're saying, oh, well, the weather will be great and we'll be able to get through. From what I saw on Saturday, it is in dire straits, Mark Knopfler, because it wasn't up to standard. And usually we can sort of predict that sometimes there's going to be rails in run as you predict, or you want to be on inside, or you want to be on speed. Even the track, when it goes to true position anyway, I mean, let's start. There's so much to go through with this track. A soft 5, beautiful conditions, 25, 26 degrees, and after race 6 we get a downgrade. Like it just doesn't happen. Like it's so,
obviously
anyway,
someone's
so
put the wrong track rating up there.
At the end of the day, probably the right commentary is, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything. Into the futures. What are we doing with the futures? As we've spoken about, I know you've mentioned a few, Autumn Glow, and there's Tom Kitten, and there's a few others. Is there any others, Vin Rock, you've mentioned them. Is there any others that we haven't mentioned in the show that you'd sort of looked? Because you did mention Komochi a couple of weeks ago. We're still bang on target there for the TJ for her.
Yeah, so Komochi, we gave that one out at $26 for the TJ. She's around the $15, $16 mark. Just looking at the TJ now, I'm just bringing the what looks to be the field. Private Harry's your $4 favourite. Now, he's going to have to go to weight for age. He rated well on Saturday, but if you factor in the extra weight, I still think Komochi's a better chance than him. She's around that $15, $16 mark. So I still think if you missed that 26, I'd still be taking $15 for Komochi now. Jolly Star's your second favourite there. Briasa's your third favourite. I mean, Komochi, come on. She's got to be the one that you take. We spoke about the Vinery Stud Stakes. I think Treasure of the Moment just wins, because I don't think Aliana will even go there. So have a look at that race. The Australian Cup's on your side this weekend, so I'll let you speak to that. But I would have thought Deny Knowledge is a little each-way play there. Looking further forward, the Derby, we spoke about Aliana. I think she's the one. The Kiwi horse, Willie Do It, has got some good Kiwi ratings, but he's coming off a long prep over there. Third favourite in the race is Gold Rush Guru. Well, come on, please. Aliana went straight past him like he was stuck to the fence. He either hasn't travelled to Sydney or he's just gone over the top. Who knows? Either way, I want to bet against him.
The Australian Guineas was just no good a form line, which we said. We identified in our review a couple of weeks ago and just said, it's just no good. So maybe that's part of it. I just got to be careful there. You're a little bit half in that camp that won the Australian Guineas.
I wasn't as critical as you. I'm going to claim it that way. Looking forward to the spring. Just here's one for you. So Kaying Rising looks like he's a very good horse. Now keep in mind the Everest. This is pre-noms. You get your money back if the horse doesn't have get a slot. I could back Autumn Glow at $17 now in that, right?
Right.
Because one or two things are going to happen. She's going to go to the Arrowfield Stakes. She probably wins. Then I wonder if Masara and Waller go, should we whisk her up to Doomben 10,000, 1,200 metre Group 1 weight for age, just to sort of test her out? If she can win that, let's target the Everest in the spring.
Yeah.
They might just think that anyway with her. And you can bet your bottom dollar that she might be on that second or third line of betting if she gets to that level. And if she doesn't and she needs further to show her absolute best, well, you get your money back anyway because it's the Everest. So
it's a nice play. It's a nice shout, and one for the punters to understand a little bit is the fact that, especially in knowing that camp, the Masara, the Waller, like they're not fools. They know what they're doing. If she's in the race, she's starting single figures. It's just what's going to happen. She's not going to start $17. And if they decide to go a different way, well, she doesn't. The grade is she doesn't have a slot, and you do get your cash back. So I think that's a nice shout. That's good.
That's all I got for you, brother. I hope that's enough.
But that was enough. That was brilliant. That was a really good analysis of Rosehill. There's been a lot of commentary around the track, but as you said, listen to our preview. That's how you're going to get the results. So hopefully you back that up again for another week at Rosehill, mate. The Tancred Stakes.
I'll do that, but I want to ask you something before you're not getting off the hook too lightly. So I've just given you some placement for horses.
Yes.
Jimmystar, I thought he did everything he could. He was just a mile off them in the William Reid.
He was
the track was crap. We know that. So I thought he was very good. What do you do now with him?
It's an interesting one because I've now got him. I always thought when I looked at Jimmystar, I was like, okay, he's a 1,400 to possibly a miler. And I just feel like now he's, you take out Car Young Rising or whatever it's called and possibly the Autumn Glow scenario, he's probably just about the best older sprinter we've just about got. I mean, he won an Oakley Plate going through the roof, and I know it's a handicap, but it was enormous. He starts, a short price favourite in this race on Saturday, and he just had none from the time the gates opened. Like, I know he was sort of rails in run, but then Ethan sort of went, well, I've got to get to the outside because I just can't do anything here. I'm going in behind slow horses. He was enormous. Like, he actually, his run was huge to be beaten probably 4 or 5 lengths. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's going as good as anything. I think you probably look at it and you go, well, we might as well have a crack at the 1400 all aged. I'd like him to actually freshen up and have a good crack at the Doomben 10,000. I think that's sort of be his go. He races really well with his races spaced. I like him fresh. He's just got this monster finish in him, but he's also got the ability to be able to settle a little bit closer. So I'd send him to Brisbane. I know they'll probably go to the all age and maybe he can do both. I'm not too sure, but I'd like him to freshen up and have a crack at the Brisbane Carnival. That would be my opinion on Jimmystar. Mate, we're done. I've got to now. You know what I've got to do now? I've now got to I get Hutchi in and we just slag off this meeting at Moonee Valley. No, we'll be as nice as we can.
It's nice to be someone that's not complaining about the track for a change. Love you,
see
brother.
You, mate. Well done.
See you next week.
See you, pal. All right, Ashman out. Hutchi in. We are now doing the Melbourne review. It was Moonee Valley. Hutchi, how are you? How was the weekend? You got through it all okay?
Got through a lot of racing. It was a Hong Kong derby on Sunday. So I had a big weekend. Yeah, it was pretty good. I've come dressed as you today.
Okay, good.
Feedback wasn't great either. I think you get away with it.
Yeah, well,
not so much.
I don't know if I do get away with it, but it's just the GAGF of just not caring.
Yeah, not so much the guy that isn't let's say this.
Yeah, well,
it was an interesting weekend.
Yeah, I'm wondering how we've spoken about this a little bit before of how we're going to handle this, and like a great sort of quote is, if you're not going to say anything good, don't say anything at all. So do we just sit here and look at each other for the next 25 minutes?
I had a migraine that started on Saturday and it hasn't gone away. There is a bit to talk about, though.
Yeah. Let's get to the track intel because it's going to be important. Moonee Valley, true position the entire circuit. Let's start with this, punters. It was soft 5, that's fine. It was a 25 to 26 degree beautiful day, not much wind about on Saturday. After race 6, it was downgraded to a soft 6. That's right, a soft 6. You were out there, Hutchi. I've just got the intel. Huge advantage, the inside lanes. If you were sweeping out wide, forget about it. You had none.
Well, I'll tell you what was predictable going into the meeting, that you were going to get a track that was probably going to be the case, that the inside lanes were good and on pace, because, to be honest with you, I've worked the Friday nights all through the season, and that's been how it's been playing.
Tired track, isn't it?
It's tired. What wasn't predictable was the extent of it. Under those conditions, to get a downgrade, I didn't know what I was hearing, and
no, we're not in the real world.
And then I was working with Ollie. He went out and had a look, and he said, it's deteriorated, and the eyes went like
as he took off his jacket and goes, "Jesus, hot though," but it's actually deteriorated.
Yeah, I mean it was predictable in one sense of a pattern, but I haven't seen what occurred happen on a course before, so it was unique. And I tell you what, I mean, I don't know what on earth we learn going forward. To be perfectly honest, I don't know.
And this is what we're here for, I suppose, to try and help the punter out there who's watching this, is that you almost just have to throw the meeting into the bin because horses have won, and we'll talk about hits and misses, and horses have been really well backed, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, what was being backed was, okay, are you going to find the front?
Yeah.
Are you going to be rails in run? Mm-hmm. And that's where the market gravitated. So well done on terms of that. But in terms of going, okay, well, in 2 weeks' time, they're going to be a hold of that rating. I'm worried about the horses that failed, that they come through it okay, because it was
a genuine concern.
Yeah.
I mean, the margins in some races, and how far from home some horses were beaten as well. What do you learn from them? It was like sort of watching the very testing conditions at the ball. In all seriousness, where you sort of see these extended margins back in the field. And there were plenty that got through it well. And you know what? You'll talk about the hits and misses, and there were plenty of punters that got it right.
Correct.
But from a learning perspective, I don't know what we can take from it.
And I think that's the key, is that we've just got to be buyer beware.
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
I mean, you've had a few things in your life like that, haven't you?
A few.
Yeah, I think we've had a few things
real
like
kind. I'm with you.
If you don't acknowledge it, it didn't happen.
Then that's one of the biggest learnings I think we get out of that, is that if you believe, then you're fine. It never did occur. Let's get to the Hen House. I had to find one, Hutch. And
you've done
I'm
well.
not so much from the winner point of view here. I used the race. I'm talking about race 3. 3/4 of a second inside standard time, last 400, 200 okay. I just think there might be some horses around it that might be able to be okay, even though we've asterisked this all the way through Hutch that we're just really concerned about this meeting. So that's the Hen House. I'm not even going any further. Let's get to the Dog House.
How many pages?
So, no, look, race one, again, it's just this pattern. You've sort of identified it through just about these last few reviews, is that anything sort of 2,000 metres plus in Victoria at the moment, we're just struggling to get a good number around them. Bird Dubai wins. That horse put the writing on the wall last start. It was a good performance for an import third run this prep. But it's 2 seconds outside standard time, and that's for a soft track as well. The last 400, 200, they've just broken 13, look. Again, I think this whole meeting is going to probably get binned by the market, to be honest. So I'm probably being harsh on this race. But,
the good thing was it was early in the day. So
correct.
It was good as it was going to be. So that's
exactly
not positive.
right. Exactly.
And he stays, and there's not many stays here, so that's something.
Yes.
But no.
Well, he's got a bit of upside maybe for that horse, but I'm a bit worried about the rest. That was the Dog House. Hits and misses. Okay, so look, we're going to, as you've mentioned, and I think this is a really good point, that this is not probably ones we're going to go, okay, I can follow with confidence here. This is just probably us chewing the fat over the fact that this was back because it might have been rails in run or we knew it was going to get to the front. Bird Dubai was $4.40 into $2.85. It's the hit, it wins the race. Now, the original favourite Steel Run had drawn wide, so maybe there was the early idea that Steel Run, what the track was going to play the way it was, and it might get into a tricky spot. This sort of horse sat forward of midfield and wins. And
I was very disappointed in Steel Run, but then at the end of the day, I went, well, I won't be as disappointed
correct.
in you. You probably get another go.
Yep. Race 2, Prestige Forever, $6 into $3.30 hits here again, and it sort of rode the speed and was actually quite impressive, to be honest. Again, I don't know what to make of it, but to the eye, it looks good. The numbers are okay. It's one that I could sort of go, you might be able to go on with it, but again, I'm just asterisk because of the way the track was.
Yeah, well, you've highlighted or are going to highlight one other one to follow out of the meeting, I think, which is definitely worth following. But this one's interesting, Prestige Forever, because once again, early in the day, so it was probably about as good as the track was going to be. Not much traffic on it. Look, there's not much in a lot of these 2-year-olds, and I thought it was quite a good performance, and it was still a margin. Came on nicely from the Flemington run. That Shining Smile form, I thought it was second tier, and it might be, but I don't know. There's not much between
the
first
top
tier,
top
tier and tier 2. It's like a mezzanine. There's not really the massive gap. So from that point of view, this might be a horse to sort of stick with. He was pretty
that's
good.
That's a new segment, the mezzanine.
The mezzanine.
Race 3, Top Caliber, got mine, $3.10 into $2.35. People can be critical of Craig with this, right? I'm not, because at the end of the day, I think he read the play that this track was gonzo, and he goes, I've got to just try and get moving here and get to as quickly as I can, possibly outside lead, or just be somewhere forward. And it didn't work out, and it was clearly the first one beaten in the race.
Throat issue, yeah.
Yeah, but that as well. So, and look, it seemed that way, but just you knew he was in. I think if you're watching the races and you thought, I'll be forgiving of maybe you can make ground out wide. And I go, maybe the throat issues are key here, but when this horse just couldn't get any closer in the run, especially around that bend, you're like, I'm fearful.
He didn't sort of turn up in what was expected. I thought he'd be hard to beat as well. I did check the report. I'm pretty sure it was a throat issue, but I think there's some sort of problem with him post-race.
Race 4, Stay Focused, $5.50 into $3.40. Well, it's a horse that is a hit, wins the race. Hangs on, but they thought it was going to roll forward, and it did exactly that. We'll just keep rolling because race 8, Grinzinger Bell, was probably the same horse again. We knew it was going to roll forward, $6 into $3.90 hit.
Do you jump on a tram? You've seen a pattern. I mean, most of the time punters don't mind it. You see a real hard bias here. Yep. You see money coming for it. Are you one of those that goes,
So I played into this race and I backed the different form line. I backed another profit in this race, right?
Yeah.
But when I did the numbers, I had Grinzinger Bell as my favourite, and I was like, she's probably the one. So anyone in their sort of right mind or some type of sensibility about them would be probably have something on Grinzinger Bell, right? The track's playing the way it is.
Yeah, you've got to reframe your market. Nothing.
Zero,
right?
Had zero on it. So, but you're right. This was where sharp punters are now reading the play, and we'll hit this very soon here with these horses. I mean, Grinzinger Bell's won. Schwartz in the Wave for Age race, $8 into $5.50. It hits because you knew it was going to roll forward and do what it did. This is the one that was the outlier here, was Clean Energy. Like, this is this horse did have to do it tough. Like,
did they think that she was going to lead though?
That had to be.
I think that was the reason.
Yeah, heavy, $3.90 into $2.30. But it did seem to come wide, and it's the outlier for the day, no doubt. Its performance, and then My Temptation in the last really well back, $3.90 into $2.30, and Because he got to outside leader, so I don't know if there was an issue there or not. But
found the spot, but maybe just didn't handle the
and that's the thing. And that's the thing. So this is the whole key is like, as we've spoken about, whether it's these horses in hits and misses, whether it's these other horses that are we're in the market, we just don't know what to do with them.
No, and I think further to that, I mean, we talk about wet tracks, soft tracks, heavy tracks, sand down, they're all different.
Yeah.
This is a very different Moonee
This is
Valley.
clod track.
I don't know. Yeah, this was, something like that.
Yeah.
It was, a lot of horses just didn't handle it at all.
Correct.
So you could say, I've got a wet track, it should have run well, and it didn't. You can't read too much into that either.
Yeah.
So, that's the key taking from this meeting.
Yes.
Be very, very forgiving. Maybe if you're a punter and you do hear about bias or commentators and us talking on the day, oh, look, this is a pattern. And, you see horses being backed like you haven't jumped on Grinzinger Bell, but the money can be very accurate and it's something
100%.
worth following. The market as a rule is pretty attuned to
especially
finding these kind of patterns and following them in and the money, like you said, those late doors, they were pretty good.
Yeah. No, they were strong. Absolutely. That's a hits and misses this week from PointsBet. Setting fire to it. What do you reckon it's going to be about?
Look, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
All right. So I went to a dumpling joint down the road. Anyway, no. So we'll just have the overlay here of all races at Moonee Valley. So just the last 200 metres, Hutch, of just going through. So you just had to be, I'm not going to say on speed because as long as you were rails in run, that was okay. And I think the greatest example of that was probably Chillicap, who had the rails in run, and there was a couple other horses as well. But
Vaseline was another one.
That was, I think, race 3 or race 4 was the one that really showed that forget about, and I know some people just watch partial replays and see the last 200 and go, that thing came down the outside. I think the straight probably wasn't too bad overall, but it's like the 1,000 to the 400 is where all this cactus is sort of going on here on this track. And that's where you showed that you just had to be rails in run. And then jockeys were riding that way. And if you were swooping wide, Top Caliber was a perfect example in race 3. You just couldn't win. Jimmystar had none from the way it sort of set up. There's just so many horses that were just disadvantaged by the way this track played.
Yeah, I think what happens, and a few of the jockeys were sort of saying this post-race, that was what we were hearing on the day, that down the side was where it felt heavy.
Yeah.
And this was early in the day.
Yeah.
So parts of the track were heavier than others. And I think that is not uncommon at the Valley where it gets shaded down the side.
Good point. It's happened before, like with certain things. Yep.
And perhaps that was a factor. I don't want to go into – I mean, sometimes you can overanalyze and why something happened and then what's the point? You just got to sort of look at it and take it for what it is.
And you've got to somehow get something out of it. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to do here is just to say, like, you've just got to forget a lot of this. I'm going to be really mindful of backing like horses like My Temptation, who came in with great numbers and was really well supported, backing horses like Top Caliber, all those kinds of horses that you go, I think they've got really good numbers in them. But I want to see them come out through this run okay, and then I can go back on. I'm just not going to say, it was Moonee Valley.
So you don't go next start. You sort of go, now it's a hold?
This whole Moonee Valley form, anything coming out of this Moonee Valley form, unless there's probably one other horse, there's one horse maybe that I think I can trust a bit, I'm not touching them because I just don't know how they've gone clod first time.
See, I don't have as much. I can just forget that run and go and think they'll run back to what they did before. I mean,
I hope they do.
Yeah.
But I just am so worried about how this track played and how many mental scars they might carry from it. I mean, they might have mental scars. I tell you what, I've got some mental scars from it.
We've all got some scars.
That was setting fire to it. You just could not sweep wide at this track at Moonee Valley. All right, Fox's Den. I'll just start with the one from Moonee Valley. And again, it's sort of a little bit just because I think the horse was really good when he came up the inside at Flemington. And I thought he was just in a no-hoping zone, but I thought his last 400 was great. It was Pivot City.
Yeah.
He's going really
well. What a run.
Pivot City.
It was a great run.
Yeah. And I just, as I said, hope he's come through it all okay. And I want to be with him again next day. He's a horse that, probably not one of mine is that he's probably maybe worse than midfield in run all the time. So you need some luck sometimes. I'd love him to be able to take up a position, and I don't think he probably can do that just with his early gate speed. But I think he's one we can follow with confidence going forward.
Yeah, it was one of the runs of the day without a doubt. I mean, he absolutely launched late, didn't he? So Nathan Brown, the other one he rode on the day, I've got two others from another meeting that I'll be following, but Jimmystar was also great.
Yeah, he was great. He was enormous, I thought. He ran off his feet early, and then Ethan sort of decided, well, I'm going to come wide, but he was never going to be able to do. But I just thought, again, he was great through the line.
Yep.
He's actually I don't know, he's becoming this horse now that you can sort of trust, I think, in these big 1,200-metre races. And whether they decide to go to 1,400 or not, the all-aged, I'm not sure. But
I want to see him stick to 12.
So do I. So do I.
Just leave him at 12, but hey, we'll leave it to the stable. They've got a bit of
So I thought
idea.
maybe the Brisbane Carnival, like a Doomben 10,000 type setup, would just be perfect for him if they keep him fresh. I love him fresh too. You know, you've spoken about that in the review previously. So that's what I'd love to do, but let's see what happens. Your two horses.
I've got two.
Yep.
I've got two.
They won't be from Moonee Valley.
Scenic Point from Pakenham.
Yep.
Had surprisingly jumped out very well. Was actually entered. I think they would be happy they didn't run where they intended to, but they've run at Pakenham, and 3.5 length winner. Good, good tempo, early, late, put up a margin, has rated extremely high.
Right. Good
on my numbers. So
follow it with confidence.
They'll be going to a good race probably now, and it will be hard to beat, and probably not to the same extent, or definitely not to the same extent. But Soft Love.
Yep.
Soft Love won at Bendigo on a Tuesday. It come out of it's only had 2 starts for 2 wins, so they went maiden straight to a 64.
Yep.
Pretty good performance overall. Took on 3 winners. Once again, ran decent time. It's not going to go. I don't know if you can go through the grades or whatever, but 70, the right benchmark 70 soon.
And this comes down to placement or something, doesn't it? You can place it
right.
Yep.
But it was a tough week to sort of find too much, to be honest, Jules. So, but definitely Scenic Point's one to follow going forward.
Beautiful. There's the 3 for In the Fox's Den Hunters. We're done. We got through it.
What about your team, Geelong?
Well, we spoke about it on, when did I speak about it? Fox Footy, spoke about it, Furnace, that Kryptonite Marvel, the Cats. So the last 4 years now, they've been beaten by the Saints at Marvel. They averaged 74 there. They got a little bit higher on Saturday night, but they just can't play that ground. So they play the Kangas at some stage through the year, TBC. I can't remember what round it is.
We might have to go to that game.
Well, it might be fun.
Yeah.
I thought we have a good bet on the Kangas.
I could go cheer North home for you.
We could go have we'll have a few dollars on North Melbourne at the line, who were airborne, by the way, after they touched up Melbourne off a wet track. That Melbourne had to deliver. Your team better. They tested the Lions. We'll take that.
It was a big improvement.
Yeah, and you were happy with the umpiring on Friday night, I heard? Thursday night.
My young lads went too. The 2 boys, they both go for the Bulldogs. Pretty upsetting, but anyway, they're looking all right too.
They are. If they ever get some cattle back, they'll actually be right there. They might not get one bloke back. I don't know what's going on there, but anyway, that's the show. See ya.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.